Lena Vale never imagined a single kiss could sentence her to death. At a stranger's wedding, she wandered into the wrong garden at the wrong moment and witnessed Marco DeLuca, the city's most ruthless crime boss, deliver brutal justice to a traitor. One scream, one witness, one unforgivable mistake. Marco should have killed her. Instead, he pulled her onto the dance floor, and in a moment of pure terror and instinct, she kissed him. Now every enemy who saw believes she belongs to him. And in Marco's world, what belongs to him becomes a target. The only question left, will he protect her or silence her first? If you're ready to dive into Lena and Marco's dangerous love story, hit that like button and drop a comment telling me what city you're watching from. I love seeing how far these stories travel across the world. Lena Vale had always believed weddings were safe places. White linen, champagne towers, elderly aunts crying into handkerchiefs. What harm could possibly exist in a world wrapped in tulle and fairy lights? She learned the truth in a single heartbeat, standing in a moonlit garden with blood on the flagstones and a gun gleaming in a stranger's hand. The wedding wasn't even hers to attend. Her friend Claire, a publicist with more connections than sense, had dragged her along as a +1 to some countryside estate wedding an hour outside the city. "You need to get out more," Claire had insisted, thrusting a glass of Prosecco into Lena's hands before abandoning her for a handsome groomsman. Lena had smiled politely, made small talk with people whose names she immediately forgot, and eventually slipped outside when the noise became too much. The gardens were extensive, sprawling across manicured lawns that dissolved into wilder territory beyond the property's ornamental hedges. Lena followed a stone path lit by solar lanterns, grateful for the cool night air and the silence broken only by distant music and cricket song. She was thinking about nothing in particular: Monday's gallery opening, whether she'd remembered to pay her electric bill, the way her shoes pinched her heels, when she heard voices ahead. Male voices. Low, tense, angry. Lena slowed instinctively, some primal warning system firing in her brain. The path curved around a dense wall of hedges, opening into a small courtyard centered around a marble fountain. 3 men stood in the shadows beyond the fountain's spray. 2 held a third between them, his face bloodied, his expensive suit torn at the shoulder. And facing them, perfectly still in the fountain's mist, stood a 4th man. Lena's breath caught. He was tall, broad-shouldered, dressed in a black suit so perfectly tailored it looked like armor. Dark hair, dark eyes, a face that could have been carved from marble. Beautiful in the way a blade is beautiful, all clean lines and lethal purpose. He stood with one hand in his pocket, utterly relaxed, while the man being restrained whimpered. "Please," the captive man gasped. "Please, Marco, I can explain." "You stole from me, Vincent." The dark-haired man, Marco, spoke quietly, his voice carrying across the courtyard with terrifying clarity. "You thought I wouldn't notice. You thought you were clever. It was just a little $40,000. Marco's tone never changed, still soft, still deadly. "You took $40,000 from my club's receipts. You falsified the books. You lied to my accountant. I was going to pay it back. With what?" Marco took a step forward, and Vincent flinched hard enough that his captors had to tighten their grip. "With the money you spent in Atlantic City? The car you bought your mistress? The debts you paid to Santoro's people?" Vincent's face went gray. You know about Santoro?" "I know everything, Vincent. That's why you work for me instead of the other way around." Marco pulled his hand from his pocket. Moonlight caught on gunmetal. "Or rather, why you used to work for me." Lena's heart stopped. She should run. She should turn around immediately and run back to the safety of the wedding reception, lose herself in the crowd, pretend she'd never seen anything. But her legs wouldn't move. Her entire body had locked in place, frozen by the nightmare unfolding 30 feet away. "Marco, please." Vincent was crying now, openly sobbing. "I have kids. I have a family. Please." "So do the dealers whose product you shorted. So do the suppliers you cheated. So does everyone you stole from when you stole from me." Marco raised the gun with the same casual grace some men used to check their watches. "You knew the rules, Vincent. You broke them anyway." The shot cracked through the garden like thunder. Lena's scream tore out of her before she could stop it, high and sharp and utterly damning. All 4 men, Three now turned toward the sound, toward her. The two enforcers moved immediately, their hands going to weapons inside their jackets. But Marco simply looked at her, his expression unreadable, gun still loose in his grip. For 3 heartbeats, nobody moved. Then Marco spoke, his voice carrying across the blood-spattered courtyard. "Bring her here." Lena ran. She spun on her ridiculous heels and bolted back down the path, her heart hammering so hard she thought it might crack her ribs. Behind her, she heard shouting, footsteps pounding stone. She kicked off her shoes and ran faster, branches whipping her arms, her breath coming in panicked sobs. The path forked. She went left without thinking, plunging deeper into the gardens, away from the lights and music. Stupid. So stupid. She should have run toward people, toward witnesses, toward help. But terror had stripped away logic, leaving only animal instinct. Hide, run, survive. She ducked behind a storage shed, pressing her back against weathered wood, trying desperately to quiet her breathing. Footsteps approached, slowed, stopped somewhere close. Too close. She went this way. A man's voice, unfamiliar. "Pretty thing. Shame." Marco wants her alive. Another voice, deeper. "For now." They moved past her hiding spot, their footsteps fading into the darkness beyond. Lena waited, counting her heartbeats, trying to decide if she was about to die. Claire would wonder where she'd gone eventually. Someone would notice. Someone would... A hand closed around her wrist. Lena screamed again, but another hand covered her mouth before the sound could escape, and she was pulled back against a solid chest, trapped against someone much larger and stronger than herself. "Stop struggling," Marco's voice, quiet against her ear. "You'll only make this harder." Lena froze. She could feel his heartbeat against her spine, steady and slow. Could smell his cologne, something expensive and understated. Could feel the gun in his other hand pressed casually against her hip. "I'm going to move my hand," he said calmly. "If you scream, you'll bring my men back, and they're not as patient as I am. Nod if you understand." Lena nodded frantically. The hand covering her mouth withdrew. Lena sucked in a shaking breath and immediately tried to twist free, but Marco's grip on her wrist was iron. "Don't!" His voice hardened slightly. "I said don't run." "You killed him." The words came out broken, breathless. "You shot him. I saw—" "Yes, and now I need to decide what to do about you." Marco turned her around to face him, still holding her wrist, his dark eyes studying her face with unsettling intensity. Up close, he was even more striking and more terrifying. There was no warmth in those eyes, no mercy, just cold calculation. "Who are you? Why are you here?" I'm nobody. I came with a friend, Claire Hendricks. She works for the Hendricks girl from the PR firm." Marco nodded slightly. "You're her +1. "Yes. I didn't mean to. I was just walking. I didn't see anything. I won't tell anyone, I swear. You saw everything." Marco's thumb brushed across her racing pulse, a gesture that might have been casual if not for the gun still visible in his other hand. "You saw my face. You heard Vincent's name. You heard mine. You're a complication, Lena Vale." Her blood went cold. "How do you know my name?" "Your friend signed you in at the gate. Security keeps lists." His mouth curved slightly, something that wasn't quite a smile. "I own security." Of course he did. Of course. Lena's mind raced frantically, searching for anything that might save her life. "Please, I won't say anything. I'll forget I was even here. You'll go back to that reception," Marco interrupted quietly, "and you'll dance with me." Lena stared at him. "What?" "The wedding, the party. You'll return with me, and you'll dance." He released her wrist but didn't step back, keeping her trapped in the small space between his body and the shed. "You'll smile. You'll laugh. You'll act like we're old friends who ran into each other in the garden." "I don't understand." 3 of Santoro's men are inside that reception. Marco's voice remained soft, educational almost. "They saw you arrive. They'll notice if you disappear. They'll wonder why. And if they wonder, they'll investigate. And if they investigate, they'll discover that one of my accountants went missing tonight." His eyes held hers. "Do you understand what happens then?" Lena's throat closed. They'll think I know something. They'll know you know something, and Santoro's people are much less civilized than mine. Marco tucked his gun away, smoothing his jacket as though they'd been discussing the weather. So we're going to walk back together. We're going to be seen together, and you're going to convince everyone watching that you're exactly what you appear to be, a pretty woman enjoying a wedding. And if I refuse? Something flickered in his expression. Not anger exactly, something colder. Then I'll have to protect my interests another way, and you won't enjoy that option. Lena's hands were shaking. All of her was shaking, but through the terror, a tiny spark of anger flared. You can't just... I can. I am. Marco offered his arm like a gentleman escorting a lady to dinner. The only question is whether you're smart enough to stay alive. Are you, Lena? She looked at his arm, at his face, at the garden path leading back toward music and lights, and people who had no idea what had just happened in the darkness beyond their champagne toasts. Every instinct screamed at her to run, to fight, to do anything except comply. But Marco was right. She'd seen too much, and running would only make everything worse. Slowly, her legs barely supporting her weight, Lena placed her hand on his arm. Good girl. Marco's voice carried approval that made her skin crawl. He led her back down the path, his pace unhurried, his grip on her hand firm but not painful. Now listen carefully. When we reach the reception, you're going to go to the bar. You're going to get a drink. You're going to find your friend and tell her you met someone interesting. Can you do that? Yes. The word came out strangled. Then, in approximately 10 minutes, you're going to join me on the dance floor. They emerged from the shadows into the glow of the garden's decorative lighting. Music swelled ahead, something slow and romantic. You're going to put your arms around me, and you're going to smile like you're having the time of your life. Why? Lena whispered. Why does it matter? Marco glanced down at her, and for the first time she saw something almost like regret in his expression. Because 3 very dangerous men need to believe you're nobody important, just another woman at another wedding. If they think otherwise... He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't need to. They reached the edge of the reception area. Lena could see couples dancing on the temporary floor that had been laid across the lawn, see Claire laughing with a cluster of guests near the champagne fountain, see the world continuing exactly as it had before her life had imploded. Marco released her arm. 10 minutes, he repeated quietly. Don't make me come find you. Then he walked away, melting into the crowd with the ease of someone who'd spent his life hiding in plain sight. A must. Lena stood frozen for a moment, her mind struggling to process what had just happened. Then her legs started moving, carrying her toward the bar on autopilot. The bartender smiled at her. She heard herself order wine, heard herself thank him, watched her hand, still shaking, accept the glass. There you are. Claire appeared at her elbow, flushed and happy. I've been looking everywhere. Where did you disappear to? Just needed air. Lena's voice sounded almost normal. Almost. It's beautiful out there. Isn't it? God, this whole wedding is like something out of a magazine. Claire grabbed her own drink, already half empty. Did you meet anyone interesting? Please tell me you talked to someone besides the catering staff. Lena opened her mouth, closed it. Across the dance floor, she could see Marco talking to an older man in a gray suit, his expression pleasant, engaged, utterly unremarkable, as if he hadn't executed someone in a garden 10 minutes ago. Actually, Lena heard herself say, I did meet someone. Claire's eyes lit up. Really? Who? Before Lena could answer, the music shifted to something slower. Couples moved onto the dance floor, and Marco turned, his gaze finding hers across the crowd with terrifying precision. He raised his eyebrows slightly. A question. A command. Lena's hands tightened around her wine glass. She could refuse. She could grab Claire and run for the parking lot, get in the car, drive away, call the police. 3 men in dark suits stood near the edge of the dance floor, watching the crowd with predatory awareness. One of them glanced in her direction, his gaze sharp and assessing. Santoro's men. Lena set down her wine glass. Excuse me a second. Wait, where are you? But Lena was already walking, her bare feet silent on the grass, her heart thundering as she crossed the distance between safety and something that felt like diving off a cliff. Marco met her at the edge of the dance floor. Without a word, he took her hand and led her into the space where other couples swayed to the music. His arm circled her waist, pulling her close, too close, his hand settling at the small of her back with possessive certainty. "Very good," he murmured, his breath warm against her temple. "Now smile." Lena tried. It felt like her face might crack. "I can't do this." "You're already doing it." Marco began moving, leading her through the dance with practiced ease. He was good at this, she realized dimly. Good at everything, probably. Men like him didn't survive by being incompetent. "Relax. You're supposed to be enjoying yourself." "You killed someone." "Yes." "You're going to kill me too." "No." His hand tightened slightly on her back, keeping her anchored against him when she tried to pull away. "If I wanted you dead, you'd already be in that fountain with Vincent. I'm keeping you alive, Lena. Try to remember that." By forcing me to dance with you?" "By making sure everyone here sees that you're mine." He said it simply, matter-of-factly, as though discussing the weather. "The moment you screamed, you became connected to me. The moment you ran, you became interesting to my enemies. Now the only way to keep you safe is to make that connection look intentional." Lena's mind reeled. This is insane. This is necessary. Marco spun her slightly, his movements smooth and confident. To anyone watching, they probably looked like any other couple. Maybe new lovers, maybe old friends rekindling something. No one could see the terror locked in Lena's chest. No one could see the calculation in Marco's dark eyes. "Dance with me. Smile. Convince them you chose this." "I didn't choose anything." "Then choose now." His voice dropped lower, harder. "Choose to live. Choose to be smart. Choose to trust that I know what I'm doing." "Why should I trust you?" "Because you don't have any other options." The music swelled. Other couples moved around them, lost in their own worlds. Lena felt tears burning behind her eyes, hot and desperate, but she blinked them back. She wouldn't cry. She wouldn't fall apart. Not here. Not in front of him. "What happens after this?" she whispered. "After this, you go home. You go back to your normal life. You forget tonight ever happened." "Just like that?" "Just like that." Marco's gaze drifted over her shoulder, tracking something, someone. Then his attention returned to her, and something in his expression shifted, softened, just slightly. "Unless you make it complicated." "How would I—" He kissed her. It wasn't rough or brutal or any of the things Lena might have expected from a man who'd just committed murder. It was soft, almost gentle, his mouth moving against hers with careful precision. One hand came up to cup her jaw, tilting her face up to his, while his other arm tightened around her waist. Lena's brain went blank with shock. Her hands, trapped between their bodies, pushed weakly at his chest. But Marco didn't relent, didn't pull back, just kissed her with the same terrifying confidence he applied to everything else, like he knew exactly what he was doing and exactly what effect it would have. When he finally drew back, Lena was gasping, dizzy, her face burning. "What the hell?" Santoro's second-in-command was watching. Marco's thumb brushed across her jaw, his expression unreadable. "Now he's not." "You kissed me for show?" "I kissed you for survival, yours and mine." He guided her through another turn, his hold never loosening. "In 5 seconds, you're going to laugh like I said something charming. Can you do that?" Lena's entire body felt like a live wire. "I... 5, 4, 3... Marco smiled down at her, and it was devastating, warm and genuine and utterly false. 2. Lena laughed. It came out too high, too breathless, but it was a laugh. Several people nearby smiled indulgently. The man in the gray suit, Santoro's second, presumably, had already turned away, bored. "Perfect," Marco said softly. "You're a natural." "I hate you." "You don't know me well enough to hate me." He spun her one final time as the music faded, then released her with a polite step back, every inch the gentleman. His voice, when he spoke, was pitched for the people nearby. "Thank you for the dance, Lena. It was lovely to run into you." Lena stared at him, her mind scrambling for the script he expected her to follow. Yes. Lovely." Marco's mouth curved. Then he took her hand and pressed a kiss to her knuckles. Again, perfectly polite, perfectly appropriate, before releasing her and walking away. Lena stood frozen in the middle of the dance floor, her hand still tingling where his mouth had touched her skin, her lips still warm from a kiss that hadn't meant anything and had meant everything. Claire materialized at her side approximately 3 seconds later, eyes huge. "Oh my God! Oh my God! Who was that?" "I don't—" Lena's voice failed. She tried again. "I don't know." "You don't know? Lena, you just made out with possibly the hottest man at this entire wedding, and you don't know who he is?" "We didn't make out. It was not just anything." Claire grabbed her shoulders, grinning wildly. "That man looked at you like you were the only person in the entire world. Please tell me you got his number." Lena's hands were shaking again. "Claire, I need to leave." "What? No, the night's just getting started." "Please." Lena heard the desperation in her own voice and tried to smooth it over. "I have a headache. I just need to go home." Claire's expression shifted from excitement to concern. "Are you okay? You look really pale." "I'm fine. I need to go." "Can you get a ride with someone else?" "Yeah, of course, but—" Claire bit her lip. "Are you sure you're okay? Did that guy do something? Because if he did, no, he was perfect." The lie tasted like ashes. "I'm just tired. Too much wine, not enough food." Claire didn't look convinced, but she let it go, hugging Lena tightly before returning to the party. Lena collected her shoes from where she'd abandoned them on the path, found her small purse with her car keys and phone, and walked to the parking area on legs that felt like water. Her hands shook so badly it took 3 tries to unlock her car. She sat in the driver's seat for a full minute, staring at nothing, her breath coming in sharp gasps that might have been the start of a panic attack. Then she looked up at the rearview mirror and froze. A black car was parked 3 spaces behind hers. Inside, barely visible in the darkness, sat a man in a dark suit, watching. One of Marco's men. Lena's blood went cold. He'd said she could go home, he'd said she could return to her normal life, but he'd put a guard on her car, which meant either he didn't trust her to stay silent or he was protecting her. From Santoro's people. From whoever else might have seen her scream in that garden. Lena started her car with trembling hands and pulled out of the parking space. The black car followed at a discreet distance, staying back but never out of sight. The drive home took 40 minutes that felt like hours. Lena's small apartment in the city had never looked so welcoming or so vulnerable. She parked in her building's garage, half expecting the black car to follow her inside, but it stayed on the street, idling at the curb. Still watching. Still there. Lena rode the elevator to her 4th-floor apartment, locked her door behind her, and stood in the darkness of her living room, trying to make sense of what had just happened. She'd witnessed a murder. She'd been discovered by the killer, and instead of being eliminated as a loose end, she'd been, what? Protected? Claimed? Marked? Your phone buzzed in her purse. Lena pulled it out with shaking hands. Unknown number. She almost didn't answer, but something, curiosity, terror, stupidity, made her press accept. "Hello? You made it home safely." Marco's voice, calm and unsurprised. "Good." Lena's throat closed. "How did you get my number?" "The same way I got your name. I told you. I own security." A pause. "There's a man outside your building. His name is David. He'll be there until morning, just to make sure no one bothers you tonight." "You're having me watched." "I'm having you protected. There's a difference." "I don't want your protection. I want you to leave me alone." "Unfortunately, that's not possible anymore." Marco's tone remained patient, educational. "You became part of my world the moment you screamed. Now we both have to live with the consequences." "I could go to the police?" The words came out defiant, desperate. "You could," Marco agreed. "You could tell them you witnessed Vincent's death. You could describe what you saw, and then you'd spend the next several months, maybe years, as a witness in a case that would destroy your life, put you in protective custody, and ultimately accomplish nothing. Vincent was a criminal, Lena. He stole from criminals. No one will mourn him." "That doesn't make it okay. I'm not asking for your approval. I'm stating facts." His voice hardened slightly. "Going to the police puts you in more danger, not less. Santoro's people have cops on their payroll, so do half a dozen other organizations that would love to know what I'm doing and who I'm protecting. The safest thing you can do is exactly what you're already doing, nothing. Lena sank onto her couch, her legs finally giving out. How long? How long what? How long do I have to live like this? With guards outside my apartment, looking over my shoulder? Until I'm certain you're safe. A pause. Or until you're no longer useful to my enemies. And when will that be? I don't know. For the first time, Marco sounded almost human. Almost. I wish I had a better answer, but this is the world you stumbled into, and I can't change it just because you want me to. Lena closed her eyes. Tears finally spilled over, hot and silent. I didn't ask for this. No, you didn't. Something in his voice shifted. For what it's worth, I'm sorry. Genuinely. You were in the wrong place at the wrong time, and now you're paying for it. That's not fair. But you're not going to fix it. I'm going to keep you alive. That's the best I can offer. Another pause. Get some sleep, Lena. Tomorrow will be easier. Will it? No, but you'll be less terrified, and that's something. The line clicked dead. Lena sat in the darkness of her apartment, phone still pressed to her ear, listening to silence. Outside her window, the city glittered with 1,000 lights. Oblivious, beautiful, utterly indifferent to the fact that her entire life had just been overwritten by a single terrible moment. She thought about calling someone. Her mother, maybe. Or her coworker Sarah, who was good in a crisis. But what would she say? That she'd witnessed a murder? That the city's most dangerous crime boss had kissed her in front of his enemies and now had guards protecting her apartment? No one would believe her. And even if they did, it would only put them in danger too. So Lena sat alone, waiting for morning, while somewhere in the darkness outside a stranger named David kept watch over her door, a reminder that she no longer controlled her own life, if she ever had. And across the city, in an office she'd never seen, Marco DeLuca poured himself a drink and considered the impossible complication of a woman with terrified eyes and a scream that had changed everything. He told her the truth. He hadn't wanted this. Witnesses were liabilities, complications, problems to be solved quickly and permanently. But when he'd found her hiding behind that shed, her pulse racing under his hand, her eyes huge with terror, something had shifted. Some calculation he couldn't quite name. She wasn't supposed to matter. But she'd kissed him back on that dance floor just for a second, before her brain caught up with her panic. He'd felt it, that tiny moment of surrender before she'd remembered to be afraid. And now he couldn't stop thinking about it. Marco drained his glass and pulled out his phone, dialing a familiar number. Status, he said when the line connected. Subject is inside her apartment, David's voice came back, professional and calm. No movement from Santoro's people. No tails that I've spotted. Building is secure. Good. Maintain position until 6 a.m., then rotate with Martinez. Understood, boss. Marco hung up and stared at the city lights beyond his window. The same view Lena was probably seeing from her own apartment, though she didn't know it yet. He'd meant what he'd said. She was a complication, a problem. But problems could be managed, controlled, protected. And if part of him wanted to do more than just protect her, if part of him kept remembering the way she'd looked up at him on that dance floor, terrified and furious and heartbreakingly brave, well, that was a problem he'd have to manage too. Morning came with pale light filtering through Lena's curtains, and the disorienting realization that the previous night hadn't been a nightmare. Her phone showed 3 missed calls from Claire and a text message from an unknown number that simply read, "Coffee's on your doorstep. Don't open the door until David knocks twice." Lena sat up slowly, every muscle aching like she'd run a marathon. 2 soft knocks sounded against her door. She waited, heart pounding, until she heard footsteps retreating down the hallway. Only then did she unlock the deadbolt and crack the door open. An insulated cup sat on her doormat, still steaming. Beside it, a brown paper bag that smelled like fresh pastries. No note, no explanation. Just breakfast delivered by a man whose job was to watch her sleep. Lena brought both inside, locked the door again, and stood in her kitchen trying to decide if accepting coffee from her assigned bodyguard made her complicit in whatever nightmare she'd fallen into. Her stomach growled, answering that question with brutal practicality. She was starving. The coffee was perfect. Cream, no sugar, exactly how she took it, which meant Marco knew, which meant he'd been watching her longer than just last night. That thought should have terrified her. Instead, Lena felt a strange numbness settling over her shock, like her brain had finally accepted that normal rules no longer applied and was adapting accordingly. She ate the croissant, buttery, still warm, and tried to figure out what happened next. It was Sunday. The gallery was closed. She had no plans, no obligations, nothing that required her to leave this apartment and face a world that now included armed guards and crime bosses who sent breakfast. Her phone rang. Claire's name flashed across the screen. Lena almost didn't answer, but ignoring her friend would only create more questions. She pressed accept with a hand that had finally stopped shaking. "Please tell me you're alive," Claire said immediately. "You disappeared last night and didn't answer any of my texts, and I was starting to think that hot, mysterious stranger murdered you." "I'm fine." Lena's voice came out steadier than she'd expected. "Just tired. Too much wine." "That's what you said last night, but you looked genuinely freaked out." A pause. "Did something happen? With that guy?" "No, he was nice." The lie tasted like ash, but Lena forced it out. "We just talked. Danced, that's all." "Lena, I saw that kiss. That was not just talking." Lena closed her eyes. Of course Claire had seen. Half the wedding had probably seen. That was the point. It wasn't a big deal. "Are you going to see him again?" "I don't know. Maybe. Can we talk about this later? I really need to sleep." Claire sighed, but relented. "Fine, but you're buying lunch this week and telling me everything. Deal?" "Deal." Lena hung up before Claire could ask any more questions that required creative lying. The apartment felt too quiet after that. Too empty. Lena showered, changed into comfortable clothes, and tried to focus on normal Sunday activities: laundry, reading, answering emails. But every sound in the hallway made her freeze. Every car door outside her window made her flinch. Around noon, her phone rang again. Unknown number. Different from last night's, but Lena knew with absolute certainty who it would be before she answered. "Hello? How are you feeling?" Marco's voice, calm as ever, like they were old friends checking in. "How do you think I'm feeling?" "Scared, angry, confused." A pause. "Probably wondering if this is your life now." "Is it?" Lena asked bluntly. "Is this my life now? Guards and surveillance and breakfast deliveries?" "For the immediate future, yes." Marco sounded almost apologetic. "I need you to understand something, Lena. What happened last night wasn't just about Vincent. It was about sending a message to everyone who works for me. Loyalty matters. Betrayal has consequences. And anyone who witnessed that message became part of it. I didn't want to be part of anything. I know. But intention doesn't change reality." He paused, and she heard ice clinking in a glass. "I'm trying to protect you. I need you to trust that." "Why should I trust someone who kills people?" "Because the alternative is trusting people who kill without rules, without mercy, without any of the structure that keeps this city from tearing itself apart." His voice hardened slightly. "I'm not a good man, Lena, but I'm better than the alternatives. And right now I'm the only thing standing between you and those alternatives." Lena sank onto her couch, exhaustion washing over her. "What do you want from me?" "Nothing. Just your silence and your patience while I make sure you're safe." "For how long?" "I don't know yet. These things take time." Another pause. "I'm going to send a car for you tomorrow morning, 7:30. Lena's heart stopped. "Why?" "Because you have work. The gallery opens at 9, and if you don't show up, people will ask questions. Your boss will worry. Your routine needs to continue exactly as it always has." "You're sending me to work with an armed escort?" "I'm sending you to work in a car with a driver who happens to be trained in executive protection. There's a difference." Marco's tone turned almost gentle. "Lena, I understand this is overwhelming, but the more normal your life appears, the safer you'll be. Trust me." "Stop telling me to trust you." "Then trust your own instincts. You're smart enough to know I'm right." The line went dead. Lena threw her phone across the room, then immediately regretted it when she heard something crack. She retrieved it, screen intact, thankfully, and sank back onto the couch with her head in her hands. This couldn't be real. None of this could be real. But the coffee cup still sat on her kitchen counter, and when she looked out her window, she could see a black sedan parked across the street with a man in the driver's seat reading a newspaper. Real. All of it real. The rest of Sunday passed in a haze. Lena tried to read but couldn't focus. Tried to watch TV but found herself staring through the screen. Around 6 in the evening, another text arrived. Dinner outside your door in 10 minutes. Chicken parmesan from Russo's. Russo's was her favorite Italian restaurant, 3 blocks from her apartment. She ordered from them at least twice a month. Marco wasn't just watching her. He was studying her, learning her patterns, her preferences, her entire life. The knock came exactly 10 minutes later, 2 soft raps, then retreating footsteps. Lena collected the bag of food and ate alone at her small dining table, trying not to think about how the chicken was cooked perfectly, exactly how she liked it. That night, she barely slept. Every sound became a threat. Every shadow held potential danger. She kept her phone on the nightstand, some irrational part of her brain convinced that if something went wrong, Marco would somehow know and fix it. Which was insane. Trusting a killer to protect her was insane. But by dawn, exhausted and wrung out, Lena had to admit an uncomfortable truth. She did trust him. Not because he was good or safe or anything approaching decent, but because he'd had multiple opportunities to kill her and hadn't taken any of them. At 7:15 Monday morning, Lena dressed for work in her usual gallery uniform, black slacks, silk blouse, minimal jewelry. She applied makeup carefully, covering the dark circles under her eyes, and tried to look like a woman whose biggest concern was whether the new exhibition would attract enough visitors. At exactly 7:30, her phone buzzed. "Car is downstairs." Lena grabbed her purse, locked her apartment, and rode the elevator down with her heart in her throat. The lobby was empty except for her elderly neighbor, Mrs. Chen, collecting her mail. Everything normal. Everything fine. The black sedan waited at the curb. A different man from last night stood beside the rear door, tall, professionally dressed, with the kind of alert stillness that marked him as dangerous despite his pleasant expression. "Miss Vale?" He opened the door for her. "I'm Marcus. I'll be driving you this morning." Lena climbed into the back seat without a word. The interior smelled like expensive leather and subtly masculine cologne. Marcus closed the door gently and moved around to the driver's seat. "The gallery is on 5th Street, correct?" he asked, meeting her eyes in the rearview mirror. "Yes. We'll have you there in 15 minutes. He pulled smoothly into traffic, driving with the easy competence of someone who'd done this 1,000 times. Lena watched the familiar street slide past her window, trying to reconcile this strange new reality with the life she'd lived just 48 hours ago. Everything looked the same. Coffee shops opening, people walking dogs, morning commuters hurrying towards subway stations. But she was different now, changed, marked by violence she'd witnessed and choices she'd never made. "Miss Vale?" Marcus's voice interrupted her thoughts. "We're being followed." Lena's blood went cold. "What?" "Dark blue Honda, 3 cars back. He picked us up 2 blocks from your building." Marcus's tone remained calm, almost bored. "Don't worry, it's expected." "Expected by who?" "People who want to know if you're important enough to warrant Mr. DeLuca's attention." Marcus made a smooth turn onto a side street. The Honda followed. "They're just gathering information. They won't approach." "How do you know?" "Because if they approach you, they approach Mr. DeLuca. And no one's that stupid." He glanced at her in the mirror. "You're safe, Miss Vale. I promise." The ride to the gallery took 20 minutes instead of 15, Marcus taking a deliberately circuitous route that eventually lost the Honda in midtown traffic. He pulled up outside the gallery's front entrance precisely at 8:45. "I'll be here at 6 to take you home," he said as he opened her door. "If you need to leave earlier, call this number." He handed her a business card with nothing but a phone number printed on expensive stock. Lena took it with numb fingers. "What if I don't want to ride with you?" Marcus's expression didn't change, but something flickered in his eyes. Sympathy, maybe. "Then I'll follow at a discreet distance and make sure you arrive safely anyway. Mr. DeLuca was very clear about your protection, Miss Vale." There was nothing to say to that. Lena walked into the gallery on shaking legs, trying to paste on her professional smile as her coworker Sarah looked up from the reception desk. "Morning! How was your weekend?" Sarah asked cheerfully. "Fine, quiet." Lena set her purse in her desk drawer, willing her hands not to shake. "How was yours?" "Oh, Netflix and existential dread." Sarah laughed. "The usual." "Hey, did you hear about the new installation? Gregory wants it set up by Thursday, and it's going to be a nightmare." They fell into familiar rhythms, discussing exhibition layouts, arguing about lighting, coordinating with artists. Normal work, normal conversation. For almost 3 hours, Lena managed to forget about black sedans and men with guns and a crime boss who sent her breakfast. Then at 11:30, the gallery's front door opened and Marco walked in. Lena froze mid-sentence, her entire body going rigid. He wore a different suit today, charcoal gray, perfectly tailored, and looked like any other wealthy collector browsing art. Except for his eyes, which found hers immediately across the gallery space with predatory precision. Sarah noticed Lena's reaction and turned. "Oh, wow. Can I help you, sir?" "I'm interested in the Rothstein collection." Marco's voice was smooth, cultured, giving no indication that he'd held a gun 2 nights ago. "I understand you have several pieces on display." "We do. Let me get our specialist." Sarah turned to Lena with bright encouragement. "Lena handles our contemporary acquisitions. She can tell you everything about Rothstein's work." Lena wanted to refuse, wanted to run. But Marco was already walking toward her with that same unhurried confidence, and Sarah was watching, and there was absolutely no way to escape without causing a scene. "Miss Vale." Marco offered his hand like they'd never met. "A pleasure." Lena shook it because she had no choice. His grip was warm, firm, entirely professional. "Mr. DeLuca, Marco DeLuca." He released her hand and gestured toward the exhibition wall. "I'm particularly interested in the triptych. Could you tell me about the artist's technique?" It was surreal, completely surreal. Lena heard herself launching into her standard speech about Rothstein's use of color and texture, about the emotional resonance of his abstract compositions, about the critical reception of his later work. And Marco listened with apparent genuine interest, asking intelligent questions, examining the pieces with the careful attention of a serious collector. 20 minutes passed. Sarah returned to her desk, satisfied that Lena had the situation handled. And finally, when they were standing alone in front of a massive canvas of crimson and gold, Marco spoke quietly without looking at her. "I needed to see for myself that you were all right." Lena kept her eyes on the painting. "You have people watching me constantly. You know exactly how I am." "Surveillance isn't the same as seeing someone." He paused. "You look tired." "I wonder why." "I'm sorry." And he sounded it, genuinely. "I know this is difficult." "Do you?" Lena finally turned to face him, keeping her voice low. "Do you actually know what it's like to have your entire life taken over by someone else's choices?" Something flickered across Marco's expression. "Yes, actually I do." The answer surprised her enough that she fell silent. Marco studied the painting for another moment, then reached into his jacket and pulled out a slim envelope. "I'm hosting a small gathering Friday evening. Dinner at my home. Very select guest list. Business associates, a few collectors." He offered her the envelope. "I'd like you to attend." Lena stared at the envelope like it might bite her. "Why?" "Because the people who are watching you need to see that your connection to me is social, not coerced. They need to believe you're there willingly." His voice dropped even lower. "I know it's asking a lot, but it's necessary. And if I refuse, then I'll find another way to keep you safe, but it will be harder, more intrusive." Marco's eyes held hers. "I'm trying to give you choices, Lena. Limited ones, but choices nonetheless." Lena took the envelope with trembling fingers. "I don't know how to navigate your world." "I'll help you, I promise." He stepped back, returning to his role as interested collector. "Thank you for the information, Miss Vale. I'll consider the triptych carefully." Then he was walking away, nodding politely to Sarah as he left the gallery, every inch the cultured businessman with too much money and refined taste. Sarah appeared at Lena's elbow immediately. "Oh my God, do you know who that was?" Lena's throat closed. "Should I?" "Marco DeLuca. He owns like half the real estate in the financial district. And clubs. And I think some import-export business? Sarah's eyes were huge. He's incredibly wealthy and incredibly private. The fact that he came here personally instead of sending an assistant is major. He seemed nice enough. The lie came easier this time. Nice? Lena, he's gorgeous and rich, and he spent 30 minutes talking to you about art. Sarah grabbed her shoulders, grinning. Please tell me you're going to follow up on that. Lena looked down at the envelope in her hands. Heavy paper, expensive. Inside would be an invitation to step deeper into Marco's world, to perform for his enemies, to pretend she belonged somewhere she absolutely didn't. I don't know, she said honestly. I really don't know. But that night, alone in her apartment with her guard stationed outside and her phone showing another message from an unknown number, Marcus said you made it through the day well. I'm proud of you. Lena opened the envelope. The invitation was elegant, cream cardstock with simple black text. Friday, 8 p.m., cocktail attire. Car will collect you at 7:30. No request for RSVP. No question about whether she'd attend. Because Marco already knew she would. They both did. Lena set the invitation on her counter and poured herself a glass of wine with shaking hands, trying to figure out when exactly she'd stopped fighting and started accepting. When fear had transformed into something else. Not trust exactly, but a kind of grim pragmatism that acknowledged reality and adapted to survive it. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. She almost ignored it, but something made her answer. Hello? You opened the invitation. Marco's voice, quiet in the darkness. Not a question. How did you... Lena stopped. Of course he knew. He knew everything. I haven't decided if I'm coming. Yes, you have. A pause. Lena, I need you to understand something. The people I'm protecting you from, they're watching to see if you matter. If I treat you casually, they'll assume you're disposable. But if I bring you into my circle, introduce you publicly, they'll reassess. So I'm leverage. You're under my protection. There's a difference. He sighed. I'm not asking you to like this situation. I'm not even asking you to forgive me for putting you in it. I'm just asking you to work with me until it's safe enough for you to walk away. And when will that be? I don't know, but I'm working on it, I promise. Something shifted in his voice. The dress code is cocktail attire, but nothing too formal. You don't need to impress anyone, just be yourself. Myself doesn't belong at a crime boss's dinner party. Yourself survived a murder scene and managed to convince my enemies you were exactly where you wanted to be. I think you'll be fine. A pause. Get some sleep, Lena. Tomorrow will be easier. You keep saying that, because eventually it will be true. The line went dead. Lena stared at her phone, then at the invitation, then out her window at the city lights stretching into darkness. Somewhere out there, Marco sat in whatever fortress he called home, making decisions that shaped her life whether she wanted them to or not. And somehow, impossibly, she was starting to believe he actually cared about keeping her alive, which was either the smartest survival instinct she'd ever had or the most dangerous delusion. Lena suspected she'd find out Friday night. The week crawled by with agonizing slowness, each day blurring into the next in a routine that should have been comforting but felt like waiting for an axe to fall. Marcus drove Lena to work every morning, picked her up every evening, his presence becoming so familiar she almost stopped noticing the gun he wore under his jacket. Almost. Tuesday brought flowers to the gallery, a stunning arrangement of white roses and lilies that Sarah fussed over for 20 minutes before Lena found the card tucked among the blooms. No signature, just a single line in elegant script. Courage is choosing to move forward even when you're afraid. Lena threw the card away but kept looking at the flowers, hating how beautiful they were, hating more that some traitorous part of her appreciated the gesture. Wednesday, Claire cornered her at lunch with questions Lena deflected badly. You're being weird, Claire announced over salads neither of them was really eating. Ever since that wedding, you've been jumpy and distracted and you keep looking over your shoulder like someone's following you. I'm fine, Lena lied. Just stressed about the new exhibition. Bullshit. This is about that guy, isn't it? Marco, whatever his name is. Claire leaned forward, her voice dropping. Did he do something to you? Because if he hurt you, Lena, I swear. He didn't hurt me. That, at least, was true. Marco had done many things, but physical harm wasn't among them. He's just intense, and I'm not sure I'm ready for intense right now. Claire studied her for a long moment, clearly unconvinced, but eventually let it drop. Okay, but if you need to talk, I'm here. You know that, right? Lena nodded, throat tight with guilt and fear, and a dozen other emotions she couldn't name. She wanted desperately to tell someone the truth, to share the weight crushing her chest, but the truth would only endanger Claire, and Lena had already learned that proximity to her was dangerous. Thursday evening, a garment bag appeared outside her apartment door with the usual 2-knock warning. Inside, Lena found a dress that probably cost more than her monthly rent, midnight blue silk that shimmered like water, elegant without being ostentatious, with a hemline that would fall just above her knees and a neckline that suggested rather than revealed. The note pinned to the hanger read, "In case you don't have something suitable, but wear whatever makes you comfortable. M." Lena held the dress up to herself in the mirror, watching the silk catch the light, and felt tears burning behind her eyes. It was perfect. Absolutely perfect. Which somehow made everything worse because it meant Marco was paying attention not just to her schedule and her safety, but to her taste, her style, her sense of self. She should have been furious, should have thrown the dress back in his face. Instead, she hung it carefully in her closet and tried not to think about how it would feel to wear something so beautiful while pretending to belong somewhere she absolutely didn't. Friday arrived with cruel inevitability. Lena went through her workday in a fog, barely hearing Sarah's chatter about weekend plans, mechanically discussing installation schedules with Gregory. At 6 o'clock, Marcus appeared exactly on time, his expression giving nothing away as he held the car door. "Big night," he said neutrally as they pulled into traffic. "Is it always like this?" Lena asked suddenly. "For the women Marco brings around?" Marcus's eyes found hers in the rearview mirror. "Mr. DeLuca doesn't bring women around, Miss Vale. In the 5 years I've worked for him, you're the first person he's personally invited to his home who wasn't business or family." That information settled in Lena's stomach like a stone. "Why?" "You'd have to ask him." Marcus paused. "But if I had to guess, I'd say it's because you're different. You didn't choose this world. You're not angling for position or money or protection. You're just trying to survive something that wasn't your fault." "And that matters to him?" "More than you'd think." Marcus turned down a familiar street. "Mr. DeLuca has very specific rules about how he operates. One of them is that civilians don't pay for business problems. You witnessed something you shouldn't have, but that wasn't your choice. So he's making sure you don't suffer for it. By forcing me to attend dinner parties? By making sure his enemies understand that harming you would be the last mistake they ever made." Marcus pulled up outside her building. 7:30, Miss Vale? I'll be waiting." Lena showered and dressed with mechanical precision, trying not to think about what the evening would bring. The blue silk dress fit perfectly. Of course it did, skimming her curves without clinging, making her look elegant and expensive and like someone who belonged at a crime boss's dinner table. She kept her makeup simple, her jewelry minimal, small diamond studs that had been her grandmother's, and a delicate silver bracelet. When she looked in the mirror, she barely recognized herself. At 7:30 exactly, Marcus knocked. Lena grabbed a small clutch purse, checked 3 times that she had her phone and keys, and opened the door before she could lose her nerve. Marcus waited in the hallway, professionally neutral. "You look lovely, Miss Vale." "I look terrified." "That too." The ghost of a smile touched his mouth. "But Mr. DeLuca will take care of you. He's good at that." The drive took 40 minutes, heading away from the city center into the hills where old money built estates behind gates and walls. Marcus navigated winding roads with practiced ease, eventually turning onto a private drive that led to a sprawling modern mansion, all glass and stone and careful lighting that made the architecture glow against the darkening sky. Lena's hands clenched in her lap. "How many people will be there?" 12, including you and Mr. DeLuca. "Small gathering, like he said." Marcus pulled up to the entrance where a valet waited. "Remember, you're here because he wants you here. That's all anyone needs to know." The valet opened her door. Lena stepped out on shaking legs, the cool evening air raising goosebumps on her bare arms. The house's front entrance stood open, warm light spilling onto the stone walkway, and she could hear conversation and soft music from inside. She was actually doing this, walking into the lion's den wearing silk and terror. A woman in a simple black dress appeared in the doorway, older, professionally warm. "Miss Vale? Please come in. Mr. DeLuca is expecting you." Lena followed her through an entrance hall that belonged in an architecture magazine. Soaring ceilings, original art, furniture that probably cost more than most people's cars. The house was beautiful in an understated way. Nothing ostentatious or gaudy, just quiet wealth and impeccable taste. They passed through to a living room where people clustered in small groups, holding drinks and conversing. Everyone looked expensive and comfortable, like gatherings in multi-million-dollar homes were just another Friday night. Lena recognized no one, which somehow made it worse. Then Marco turned from a conversation near the windows, his eyes finding her across the room with immediate focus. He came toward her directly, cutting through the space between them with that same predatory grace she remembered from the garden. Tonight he wore a black suit without a tie, the top button of his shirt undone, looking relaxed and dangerous and impossibly handsome. "Lena." He took her hand, his grip warm and steady. "Thank you for coming." "Did I have a choice?" she asked quietly. "Always." His thumb brushed across her knuckles. "But I'm glad you chose this." He tucked her hand into the crook of his arm, anchoring her to his side. "Come, let me introduce you." The next 30 minutes passed in a blur of names and faces Lena knew she'd never remember. Marco introduced her simply as Lena Vale, who works at the Rothstein Gallery, offering no explanation for her presence beyond that. Some people seemed curious, others merely polite, but no one questioned why she was there, because Marco wanted her there, and apparently, in his world, that was reason enough. "You're doing well," he murmured during a brief moment when they were relatively alone near the bar. "I know this is uncomfortable, but you're handling it perfectly. I feel like I'm going to throw up." "Then smile like everything's wonderful and excuse yourself to the bathroom if you need to." His hand settled at the small of her back, steadying her. "But you won't need to. You're stronger than you think." "How would you know?" "Because you're still standing, still fighting, still trying to take control of a situation designed to strip control away." His voice dropped lower. "That takes remarkable strength, Lena." Before she could respond, a new voice cut across the conversation. "Marco, you didn't tell me you'd found someone interesting." Lena turned to find a man approaching, late 50s, silver hair, expensive suit, and eyes that assessed her with the cold precision of someone used to evaluating assets. Something about him made her skin crawl. Marco's hand tightened slightly on her back. "Lena, this is Richard Santoro." "Richard. Lena Vale. Santoro." The name from the garden. The rival Marco had mentioned. Lena's blood went cold, but she managed to extend her hand with something approaching composure. "Mr. Santoro." "Miss Vale." Santoro's handshake was brief, impersonal. "How did you and Marco meet?" "At a wedding," Marco answered before Lena could. "Mutual acquaintance. We discovered a shared interest in contemporary art." "How civilized." Santoro's smile didn't reach his eyes. "And what do you think of our Marco's collection? Has he shown you his Kandinsky yet?" "Not yet." Lena fought to keep her voice steady. "Though I'd love to see it." "I'm sure he'd love to show you." Something sharp flickered in Santoro's expression. "Marco's very particular about who he brings into his home. You should feel honored." "I do." The lie tasted like poison, but Lena delivered it smoothly. Santoro studied her for another moment, then turned his attention back to Marco. "We should discuss the Riverside property before the evening ends. The development timeline has shifted." After dinner, Marco's tone was pleasant but final. "Tonight is social, Richard. Business can wait." Santoro's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly, but he nodded and moved away. The moment he was out of earshot, Lena's legs went weak. "Breathe," Marco said quietly, his hand still steady on her back. "You did beautifully." "That's the man." "Yes, That's the man whose people were watching at the wedding, the man Vincent was working with. Marco guided her toward the windows overlooking the garden. He needed to see you tonight. Needed to assess whether you're a threat or simply a woman I'm seeing. And what did he decide? That you're too genuine to be dangerous, too nervous to be an operative, too obviously out of your depth to be anything except what you appear to be. Marco's mouth curved slightly. Which is exactly what we wanted. Lena looked out at the manicured gardens, remembering another garden where blood had stained flagstones. Is this ever going to end? Yes, I promise. Marco turned her gently to face him. Santoro came tonight to measure his response. Now that he's seen you're not a threat, the attention on you will decrease. A few more weeks of visibility, then you can fade back into your normal life. Just like that? Just like that. His hand came up to brush a strand of hair from her face, the gesture oddly tender. I know you don't believe me, but I've never lied to you, Lena. Not once. You've just forced me into situations I never wanted. Yes, I have. He didn't flinch from the accusation, and I'll carry that guilt. But I won't apologize for keeping you alive. Dinner was announced before Lena could respond. Marco escorted her into a dining room that could have seated 20, but tonight held 12 around a table set with crystal and candlelight. He placed her on his right, a position of honor that didn't escape anyone's notice, and kept her wine glass filled and the conversation flowing smoothly around topics she could actually engage with. The food was exquisite, prepared by what was clearly a professional chef. Lena picked at her meal, hyper-aware of Santoro seated directly across from her, watching her interactions with Marco with calculating attention. So tell me, Miss Vale, Santoro said during a lull in conversation, what draws you to contemporary art? It's such a subjective field. I think that's what I love about it, Lena answered, grateful for a topic she actually understood. There's no single right interpretation. Every viewer brings their own experience, their own perspective. What I see in a piece might be completely different from what you see. How very democratic. Santoro's smile was thin, though surely some interpretations are more valid than others. Are they? Lena met his gaze, feeling Marco's attention shift to her. I think art's power lies in its ability to mean different things to different people. A painting that speaks to loss might comfort someone grieving while inspiring someone else to create. Both responses are valid. Even if the artist intended neither, especially then, the best art transcends intention. Lena surprised herself with her own conviction. Once a piece leaves the artist's studio, it belongs to everyone who experiences it. Their interpretation becomes part of its meaning. Something shifted in Santoro's expression. Respect, maybe, or at least acknowledgement that she wasn't as vapid as he'd assumed. An interesting perspective. Lena's full of interesting perspectives, Marco said smoothly, his hand finding hers under the table and squeezing gently. It's one of the things I appreciate most about her. The conversation moved on, but Lena felt that small gesture of approval like a lifeline. Marco's thumb brushed across her knuckles, hidden from view, anchoring her through the rest of the meal. After dinner, people dispersed back to the living room for coffee and cognac. Marco was pulled into conversation about the Riverside property, leaving Lena momentarily alone near the windows. She was considering escaping to the bathroom when a woman approached, elegant, late 30s, with knowing eyes. You look like you could use some air, the woman said quietly. There's a terrace through those doors. Much quieter. Lena glanced at Marco, but he was deep in discussion with Santoro and 2 other men. I shouldn't. He'll find you if he needs you. Trust me. The woman smiled. I'm Elena, by the way, Marco's cousin. That information made Lena reassess everything about the woman's friendly approach. Lena Vale. I know, Marco told me about you. Elena gestured toward the terrace doors. Come on, 5 minutes of peace won't hurt anything. The terrace was quieter, cooler, the night air sharp and clean after the warmth of the house. Lena breathed deeply, feeling some of the tension drain from her shoulders. You're handling this better than most people would, Elena observed, leaning against the railing. The first time Marco brought me to one of these things, I locked myself in the bathroom for 20 minutes. Your family, it's different. Is it? Elena's smile was knowing. I didn't choose this world either, Lena. I just happened to be born into it. But I learned that survival means adapting, understanding the rules, and knowing when to bend versus when to break. Which is this. Definitely a bending situation. Elena studied her thoughtfully. Marco doesn't bring people here. Ever. The fact that you're in his home, meeting his associates, sitting at his right hand during dinner, that means something. It means I witnessed something I shouldn't have, and now he's managing the fallout. It means he cares what happens to you. Elena's voice gentled. I've known Marco my entire life. I've seen him make hard decisions, brutal decisions, decisions that haunt him even when they're necessary. But I've never seen him go to this much effort to protect someone who wasn't family or critical to his operations. You're neither, so ask yourself, why you? Lena's throat closed. I don't know. Then maybe you should find out. Elena pushed away from the railing. Come on, we should get back before the men start discussing things that would give you nightmares. They returned to find the gathering beginning to break up, people making their goodbyes and drifting toward the entrance. Santoro left with barely a nod in Lena's direction, his assessment apparently complete. Others followed, and soon only a handful of guests remained. Marco found Lena near the fireplace, his hand settling at her waist with familiar ease. Ready to go home? More than ready. Marcus is bringing the car around. He guided her toward the entrance, stopping in the hallway where they had a moment of relative privacy. You were perfect tonight. I know it was difficult, but you handled everything beautifully. I had art to talk about. That helped. You had more than that. You had presence, confidence. Marco's hand came up to cup her jaw, tilting her face up to his. Santoro expected a frightened girl. Instead, he got someone who could hold her own in conversation and defend her perspectives. You impressed him. That's not easy to do. I don't want to impress your enemies. I know, but I'm glad you did anyway. His thumb brushed across her cheekbone and Lena's breath caught. Thank you for trusting me tonight. I didn't have a choice. You always have a choice, Lena. You just keep choosing to trust me, even when you don't want to. His eyes searched hers. Why is that? Because you keep your promises, Lena thought. Because you've had a dozen opportunities to hurt me and haven't taken any of them. Because some instinct I don't understand says you're telling the truth when you say you're protecting me. I don't know, she said instead. Marco smiled slightly, like he could read the thoughts she hadn't spoken. Then Marcus appeared in the doorway, and the moment broke. The drive home was quiet. Lena stared out the window, exhausted and wrung out, trying to process everything that had happened. Marcus pulled up outside her building and started to get out, but Marco's voice stopped him. I'll walk her up. Marcus nodded without surprise, as if Marco walking women to their doors was perfectly normal, which, given what Elena had said, it apparently wasn't. They rode the elevator in silence. Marco walked Lena to her door and waited while she fumbled with her keys, her hands shaking with delayed reaction. Lena, his voice made her look up. It's over, the worst of it. Santoro saw what he needed to see. The attention on you will fade now. Promise? Promise. He took the keys from her trembling fingers and unlocked her door, pushing it open, but not following her inside. Get some rest. Take tomorrow to recover. No guards, no drivers, no surveillance unless you want it. Lena's eyes burned. Just like that? I'm free? Just like that. You're free. Marco handed back her keys. Though I hope you'll consider keeping Marcus's number, just in case you ever need help. Why would I need help if this is over? Because the world is dangerous even without my involvement. His expression turned serious. I meant what I said about protecting you, Lena. That doesn't end just because the immediate threat has passed. She should thank him, should acknowledge the impossible situation he'd navigated to keep her safe. Instead, she heard herself ask, Did you really buy that Rothstein triptych? Marco blinked, surprised. Then his mouth curved into a real smile, warm and genuine and devastating. I did, actually. It's being delivered next week, so I suppose I'll need to visit the gallery again to discuss installation. You don't need to do that. Maybe I want to. He reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away, and tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. "You're not what I expected, Lena Vale, and I'm rarely wrong about people." Then he stepped back, putting professional distance between them again. "Good night. Sleep well." He was halfway to the elevator when Lena called out, "Marco?" He turned back. "Thank you for keeping me alive." Something flickered in his expression, relief maybe, or satisfaction. "You're welcome, though I think you did most of the work yourself." Then he was gone, the elevator doors closing on his silhouette, leaving Lana alone in her doorway with her racing heart and the memory of his hand gentle against her face. She went inside, locked the door, and stood in her quiet apartment trying to understand what had just happened. The nightmare was over. Santoro was satisfied. She could return to her normal life. Except somehow, impossibly, she wasn't sure she wanted to. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. But when Lena opened the message, she smiled despite everything. "The dress is yours to keep. You made it look far better than it deserved." M. Lena looked down at the blue silk still shimmering in her apartment's soft light, and something in her chest shifted, settled, acknowledged a truth she wasn't quite ready to speak aloud. She was free to walk away, but she didn't think she was going to. Not yet. 3 weeks passed in something resembling normalcy. Lena returned to her regular routine, coffee shop mornings, gallery days filled with art and collectors, evenings alone in her apartment without guards stationed outside. The black sedans disappeared from her street. The surveillance faded. Even the flowers stopped arriving, as if Marco had decided she needed space to breathe. She should have been relieved, should have celebrated her freedom and forgotten about gardens and gunshots and midnight blue silk dresses hanging in her closet. Instead, she caught herself looking for him. At the gallery every time the door opened, in crowds on the street, in the back of town cars that might hold someone familiar. She'd spent 2 weeks terrified of Marco's presence in her life, and now his absence felt like a physical ache she couldn't explain and didn't want to examine too closely. "You're distracted again," Sarah observed one afternoon, sorting through exhibition catalogs with growing frustration. "That's the 3rd time I've had to repeat myself." "Sorry, long night." "Doing what? You never go anywhere anymore." Sarah set down her catalog with exaggerated care. "Lena, I'm worried about you. Ever since that wedding, you've been weird, jumpy, then calm, then distracted. What's going on?" "Nothing. I'm fine." "You're really not." Sarah's voice gentled. "Look, I know something happened, and I know you don't want to talk about it, but you're my friend, and friends don't let friends slowly unravel without at least offering to help." Lena's throat tightened. "I appreciate it, really, but I'm okay, just processing some stuff." "Does the stuff involve that obscenely hot man who bought the Rothstein triptych and keeps finding excuses to call about installation details?" Lena's head snapped up. "Marco's been calling 3 times this week." "Gregory's been handling it since you're apparently avoiding him." Sarah raised her eyebrows. "Which is interesting considering the way he looked at you that day he came in, like you were the only person in the entire gallery." "He was looking at the art." "Sure he was, and I'm the Queen of England." Sarah leaned forward conspiratorially. "What happened between you two? Because something clearly did, and whatever it was has you completely twisted up." Before Lena could answer, her phone buzzed. Unknown number. Her heart jumped before she could stop it, and Sarah's knowing smile said she'd noticed. "Go ahead, take it. I'll cover the desk." Lena stepped into the back office, hands shaking slightly as she answered. "Hello? I'm starting to think you're avoiding me." Marco's voice, warm with amusement that didn't quite hide something else underneath. "Gregory's very helpful, but I'd rather discuss installation with someone who actually understands Rothstein's work." "I thought we were done." The words came out sharper than she'd intended. "You said it was over, that I could go back to normal." "And you have, haven't you?" A pause. "No guards, no surveillance, no interference in your life whatsoever." "Then why are you calling?" "Because I actually did buy a very expensive triptych that needs to be installed properly in my home, and you're the expert." His tone remained light, but Lena heard the genuine question underneath. "Unless you'd prefer I work with someone else." She should say yes, should cut this final thread connecting them and move on with her life exactly as Marco had promised she could. "When did you want to schedule installation?" The words came out before her brain caught up with her mouth. The satisfaction in Marco's voice was audible. "Tomorrow afternoon, I'll send a car at 2. I can drive myself." "I'm sure you can, but it's 40 minutes into the hills and I'd rather you not waste time getting lost." He paused. "Please, Lena, let me send the car." The please undid her. Marco didn't seem like someone who said please often, and the fact that he'd used it on her felt significant in ways she wasn't ready to analyze. "Fine, 2 o'clock. Thank you, I'll see you tomorrow." He hung up before she could change her mind. Lena stared at her phone, trying to convince herself this was just business, just a professional consultation about art installation. But her racing heart knew better. Sarah appeared in the doorway, grinning. "So, installation consultation? Don't start." "I'm not starting anything. I'm just observing that you look more alive right now than you have in 3 weeks. Sarah's expression turned serious. "Be careful, okay? I don't know what's going on with you and Mystery Man, but you've got that look people get when they're standing at the edge of something dangerous and deciding whether to jump. I'm not jumping anywhere, it's just work. Keep telling yourself that." Sarah squeezed her shoulder. "But maybe bring pepper spray, just in case." That night, Lena couldn't sleep. She lay in bed staring at the ceiling, trying to untangle the knot of emotions in her chest. Fear was still there, definitely. A baseline current of terror at what she'd witnessed and what Marco represented. But underneath it, something else had grown. Curiosity, maybe, or recognition. Marco had kept every promise he'd made. He'd protected her, given her space when she needed it, and asked nothing in return except her silence. And now he was asking for her expertise on art installation like they were normal people with normal connections instead of a crime boss and the woman who'd witnessed him commit murder. The absurdity should have been laughable. Instead, it felt like possibility. Marcus arrived at exactly 2 o'clock the next afternoon, his familiar professionalism somehow comforting. "Miss Vale, good to see you again." "You too, Marcus." And she meant it. "How have you been?" "Busy. Mr. DeLuca keeps me on my toes." He opened the car door with a slight smile. "He's looking forward to seeing you." The drive into the hills felt different this time. Less terrifying, more anticipatory. Lena watched the city fall away through the window, replaced by winding roads and expensive real estate, and tried to prepare herself for seeing Marco again without the buffer of dinner parties and witnesses. The house looked different in afternoon sunlight, less imposing, more beautiful. Marcus led her out at the entrance where Marco waited, dressed casually in dark slacks and a white shirt with rolled sleeves that somehow made him look more dangerous than any suit ever had. "Lena, thank you for coming." He offered his hand like they were business associates instead of whatever they actually were. Lena shook it, hyper-aware of his warm grip and the way his thumb brushed across her knuckles. "Of course, the Rothstein pieces are important. They deserve proper installation. I'm counting on your expertise." Marco gestured for her to follow him inside. "I had them delivered to the East Gallery. I thought you could assess the space and make recommendations." The East Gallery turned out to be a stunning room with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the gardens and walls painted in soft, neutral tones that would showcase art beautifully. The 3 Rothstein pieces leaned against the far wall, still in their protective wrapping. "This is perfect," Lena said honestly, her professional eye already calculating sightlines and lighting. "The natural light is incredible, and the wall space gives each piece room to breathe." "I hoped you'd approve." Marco moved to stand beside her, close enough that she could smell his cologne. The same scent from the wedding, from the dance floor, from the moment everything changed. "Where would you hang them?" For the next hour, Lena lost herself in the familiar comfort of her work. She measured wall space, discussed optimal heights and spacing, debated lighting options with the easy confidence of someone who knew her subject intimately. Marco listened attentively, asked intelligent questions, and gradually Lena forgot to be nervous. "You love this," he observed, as she explained why the triptych needed specific spacing to maintain compositional integrity. "Talking about art, you light up." Lena paused, suddenly self-conscious. "It's what I studied, what I care about. I can tell." Marco stepped closer, studying not the paintings but her face. "You're different when you talk about things that matter to you. More confident, more yourself." "I'm always myself." "Are you?" His voice dropped lower. Because the woman I met in that garden was terrified. The woman at dinner was performing. But this woman, right now, talking about composition and color theory, she's real. Lena's breath caught. Why does that matter to you? Because I spend most of my life surrounded by people performing, playing roles, hiding who they really are, because showing the truth is dangerous. Marco's hand came up to touch her face, gentle and questioning. But you can't hide, Lena. Even when you're scared, even when you should lie, you tell the truth. It's remarkable. It's stupid. In your world, honesty gets people killed. In my world, yes, but you're not in my world anymore, remember? His thumb brushed across her cheekbone. You're free. You can walk away anytime you want. Then why did you bring me here? Because I wanted to see you again, and I'm hoping you wanted to see me too. Marco's dark eyes searched hers. Tell me I'm wrong. Lena should lie, should protect herself from whatever this was growing between them. But Marco was right. She couldn't hide, couldn't perform, couldn't be anything except honest, even when honesty terrified her. You're not wrong, she whispered. Marco's expression shifted, relief and something darker, hungrier. Lena. Her phone shattered the moment, buzzing insistently in her pocket. Lena pulled back, fumbling for it, her hands shaking. Sarah's name flashed across the screen. I should take this. Of course. Marco stepped back, giving her space, his expression unreadable. Lena answered. Hey, what's... Lena, where are you? Sarah's voice was sharp with panic. Please tell me you're not at the gallery. Ice flooded Lena's veins. I'm not. Why? What happened? Someone broke in, trashed Gregory's office and yours. The police are here and they're asking questions and I don't know what to tell them. Sarah's breath came fast, scared. They knew your name, Lena. They were looking for you specifically. The world tilted. Lena grabbed the edge of a nearby table, her vision swimming. Are you okay? Are you hurt? I'm fine. I wasn't here when it happened, but the security footage... Sarah's voice cracked. They had guns, Lena. Multiple men with guns tearing apart your desk looking for something. Marco was already moving, his phone to his ear, his entire demeanor shifting from charming to lethal in a heartbeat. When? He demanded, though not to Lena. 20 minutes ago. Someone answered on his line. David, maybe, or one of the other guards Lena had met. 3 men. Professional. They knew exactly where to go. Marco's jaw tightened. Santoro? Unclear. But the timing is suspicious. Lena's hands were shaking so badly she nearly dropped her phone. Sarah, I need you to leave, right now. Go somewhere public, somewhere with people. The police want to talk to you. Tell them I'll come in tomorrow, but please, get out of there. Lena's voice broke. Please. Okay, I'm going. Sarah paused. Lena, what the hell is going on? I'll explain later. Just go. Be safe. Lena hung up and turned to find Marco watching her with an expression she couldn't read, anger and calculation and something that might have been regret. This was supposed to be over, she said, her voice hollow. You said it was over. I thought it was. Marco crossed the distance between them in 2 strides. But someone clearly disagrees, and they're willing to escalate to make their point. What point? I don't know anything. I haven't said anything. It doesn't matter what you actually know. It matters what they think you know. Marco pulled out his phone again, typing rapidly. Pack your things. You're not going home tonight. What? No, I'm not. Lena. He looked up, and the fear in his eyes stopped her protests cold. 3 armed men just raided your workplace looking for you specifically. Your apartment will be next if it hasn't been hit already. You are not safe there. Then I'll go to a hotel, or Claire's place, and lead them to your friend? Put her in danger too? Marco's voice hardened. Stop being stubborn and think. The safest place for you right now is here, with me, where I have security and resources and the ability to protect you. Like you protected me before? The words came out bitter, accusing. You said this was done. You said I could go back to normal. I was wrong. He gripped her shoulders, his touch firm but not painful. I miscalculated. Santoro must have decided you're more valuable than I thought, or someone else is making a move. But I will fix this, Lena. I swear to you. How? By locking me up here like some kind of prisoner? By keeping you alive until I can neutralize the threat. Marco's eyes bored into hers. I won't lose you. Do you understand? I will not let them take you. The intensity in his voice cut through Lena's panic. This wasn't the cool, controlled crime boss from the garden or the charming host from the dinner party. This was something raw and honest and absolutely certain. Why? She whispered. Why do you care so much? Marco's hand slid from her shoulders to cup her face, his touch gentle despite the steel in his voice. Because you matter. Because letting you get hurt would be unforgivable. Because... He stopped, something flickering across his expression. Because I've spent 3 weeks trying to stay away from you and failing completely. Before Lena could process that confession, Marcus appeared in the doorway. Sir, we've confirmed activity at Miss Vale's apartment. 2 men, forced entry. They're gone now, but the place is compromised. Marco's expression went cold and hard. Get David and Carlos to secure it. Full sweep. I want to know exactly what they were looking for and what they found. Already done, but sir, Marcus glanced at Lena, clearly reluctant to continue. Say it. They left a message on her bathroom mirror, written in... Marcus paused. Written in something that looks like blood. Lena's legs gave out. Marco caught her before she could fall, his arms wrapping around her waist, holding her up. What did it say? Marco's voice was deadly quiet. We know you saw. We know you remember. Time to talk. Marcus's expression was grim. Santoro's signature move, he's sending a message. Then I'll send one back. Marco lifted Lena into his arms with easy strength, carrying her toward a leather sofa near the windows. Get Elena here and call Dr. Ross. Lena's in shock. I'm fine, Lena protested weakly, but she was shaking uncontrollably, her teeth chattering. You're not fine. You're terrified and going into shock, and you have every right to be. Marco set her down carefully, then stripped off his jacket and wrapped it around her shoulders. Marcus, move. Marcus disappeared. Marco knelt in front of Lena, his hands chafing hers, trying to warm them. Look at me. Focus on my voice. Lena tried, but her vision kept swimming. They wrote in blood. Probably not real blood, just theatrics designed to scare you. His voice stayed calm, grounding. Santoro likes drama. He thinks it makes him powerful. But all it means is he's desperate. Desperate people do desperate things. Yes, which is why you're staying here where I can protect you. Marco's hands tightened on hers. No arguments, no negotiations. Until I've dealt with this threat, you don't leave this house without armed guards. Understood? Lena wanted to fight, wanted to insist she could take care of herself, but the image of her bathroom mirror painted with threats kept flashing through her mind, and her protest died unspoken. Okay, she whispered. Relief flooded Marco's expression. Thank you. He pulled her against his chest, holding her while she shook, one hand stroking her hair with surprising gentleness. I've got you. You're safe here. I promise. Elena arrived within the hour, efficient and warm, taking charge with the easy authority of someone who'd handled crisis situations before. She settled Lena in a guest room with soft sheets and reassuring conversation, staying until Lena's shaking subsided and her breathing evened out. Marco's outside, Elena said quietly, brushing hair back from Lena's face. He's been pacing the hallway like a caged animal since we brought you up here. I've never seen him this rattled. He's probably angry that I complicated his life again. He's terrified he won't be able to protect you. Elena's eyes were kind. I meant what I said at the dinner party, Lena. Marco doesn't bring people into his home. He doesn't pace hallways worrying about anyone except family. But he's worried about you. That means something. It means I'm a problem that needs solving. No. It means you're someone he cares about. There's a difference. Elena stood, squeezing Lena's hand. Get some rest. Tomorrow we'll figure out next steps. But tonight, just let yourself be safe. After Elena left, Lena lay in the unfamiliar room staring at the ceiling, trying to make sense of everything that had happened. 6 hours ago, she'd been planning a simple installation consultation. Now she was hiding in a crime boss's guest room while his enemies hunted her. A soft knock sounded at the door. "Come in," Lena called, not surprised when Marco appeared. He looked exhausted, his shirt rumpled, his hair disheveled like he'd been running his hands through it. "I wanted to check on you before—" He stopped. "How are you feeling?" "Like my life just imploded again." "I'm sorry." Marco leaned against the doorframe, maintaining distance like he was afraid coming closer might spook her. "This is my fault. I should have seen this coming." "How could you have known?" "Because Santoro's been too quiet, too accepting of you as a non-threat. I should have realized he was planning something." Marco's jaw tightened. "I got complacent, and you're paying for it." Lena sat up slowly, pulling his jacket tighter around her shoulders. It smelled like him, cologne and something indefinably masculine. "What happens now?" "Now I make it very clear that threatening you is the worst mistake Santoro could possibly make." Marco's voice went cold. "He wants a war. I'll give him one. But on my terms, not his. People will get hurt. People always get hurt in my world, Lena. The only question is who." He crossed the room finally, sitting on the edge of the bed with careful distance between them. "But I promise you this. It won't be you. Whatever it takes, whatever it costs, you will walk away from this alive and whole." "What about you?" The question seemed to surprise him. "What about me?" "What if keeping me safe costs you everything? Your business, your reputation, your life?" Lena's voice shook. "I'm not worth that, Marco." His hand came up to cup her face, his touch achingly gentle. "Let me decide what you're worth." His thumb brushed across her cheekbone. "You asked me why I care. The truth is, I don't fully understand it myself, but I know that walking away from you feels impossible, and keeping you safe feels like the only thing that matters." Lena's breath caught. "You barely know me." "I know enough. I know you're brave even when you're terrified. I know you tell the truth even when lying would be safer. I know you chose to trust me when every instinct probably screamed not to." Marco's eyes searched hers. "And I know that somewhere between that garden and tonight, protecting you stopped being about managing a problem and became about something I can't name but can't ignore." "This is insane." "Completely." His smile was crooked, almost vulnerable. "But insanity seems to be our specialty." Lena's hand came up to cover his where it rested against her face. "I should be running from you." "Yes, you should. But I'm not." "No, you're not." Marco leaned closer, his forehead nearly touching hers. "Why is that, Lena?" "Because you make me feel safe even though you're dangerous. Because you've kept every promise even when it cost you. Because when you look at me, I feel seen in a way I've never experienced before." "I don't know," she whispered. "Liar." But there was no accusation in it, just affection and something deeper. "You know exactly why. You're just not ready to say it out loud." He was right. Somewhere in the chaos and terror, something had shifted. Marco wasn't just her protector or her captor or the man who'd dragged her into nightmare. He was becoming something else entirely. Something Lena didn't have words for, but felt with absolute certainty. "Stay with me tonight," she heard herself say. Not like that. Just stay. I don't want to be alone." Marco's eyes darkened with something that wasn't quite desire, but close to it. "Lena, please." He studied her face for a long moment, then nodded slowly. "Okay, but I sleep on top of the covers, and if you change your mind, just say the word." Lena shifted over, making room. Marco stretched out beside her, keeping his promise about the covers, maintaining careful distance even as his presence filled the space. Lena curled onto her side facing him, exhaustion finally catching up with her adrenaline. "Thank you," she whispered. "For what?" "For keeping me alive. For caring that I'm scared. For being honest about why." Her eyes drifted closed. "For making me feel less alone." Marco's hand found hers in the darkness, his fingers lacing through hers. "Get some sleep. Tomorrow we start fixing this. But tonight, just rest." Lena did, falling asleep with her hand in Marco's, and the certain knowledge that everything between them had just changed in ways neither of them could take back. And somewhere across the city, Santoro smiled at reports that Lena Vale had disappeared into Marco De Luca's fortress, satisfied that his message had been received and his chess piece moved exactly where he wanted her. The war had begun. Lena woke to sunlight streaming through unfamiliar windows and the disorienting realization that she wasn't alone. Marco sat in an armchair near the bed, fully dressed in fresh clothes, watching her with an expression she couldn't quite read. "How long have you been awake?" she asked, her voice rough with sleep. "A few hours. I had calls to make." He stood, moving to the windows to give her space. Elena left breakfast outside the door, coffee, pastries, fruit. "She said you'd need to eat before we talked." "Talked about what?" "About how we end this." Marco turned to face her and Lena saw the exhaustion etched into his features, dark circles under his eyes, tension in his jaw, the weight of decisions made in the hours she'd slept. "Santoro made his move. Now I make mine." Lena sat up slowly, Marco's jacket still wrapped around her shoulders. "What are you going to do?" "What I should have done weeks ago. Eliminate the threat completely." His voice was flat, emotionless, the tone of a man who'd made peace with violence. "But I need to know you're safe first, which means keeping you here until it's done." "How long will that take?" "Days, maybe a week." Marco crossed back to the bed, sitting on the edge with careful distance. "I know it's asking a lot, but I can't focus on what needs to happen if I'm worried about where you are and whether you're protected." Lena studied his face, the sharp angles, the dark eyes, the mouth that could be cruel or gentle depending on circumstance. She'd witnessed him kill a man without hesitation, yet he'd spent the night beside her bed just so she wouldn't feel alone. The contradiction should have terrified her. Instead, it made a strange kind of sense. "What happens after?" she asked quietly. "After you've dealt with Santoro? You go home, back to your gallery, your friends, your normal life." Marco's expression remained carefully neutral. Everything returns to the way it was before that wedding. "Is that what you want?" The question hung between them, heavy with implications neither seemed ready to voice. Marco's hand found hers where it rested on the comforter, his thumb tracing circles on her palm. "What I want doesn't matter. What's safe for you does." He met her eyes finally. "My world destroys everything good it touches, Lena. I won't let it destroy you too." "What if I'm stronger than you think?" "You are. But strength doesn't make you bulletproof." His grip tightened slightly. "I've spent my entire adult life building walls between myself and anything that could be used as leverage. Family is protected behind layers of security. Friends are carefully vetted. Connections are strategic, never emotional. It's the only way to survive what I do. And I'm a connection that's become emotional. You're everything I've spent 20 years avoiding." Marco's voice dropped to barely above a whisper. "Your vulnerability I can't afford. A weakness my enemies will exploit. A choice between what I want and what's necessary." Lena's chest tightened. "So you're choosing what's necessary?" "I'm choosing to keep you alive, even if it means letting you go." He raised her hand to his lips, pressing a kiss to her knuckles that felt like goodbye. "After this is over, you walk away clean. No guards, no surveillance, no connection to me that anyone can trace. You get your life back." "And if I don't want it back?" The words escaped before Lena could stop them, raw and honest and terrifying. "What if I want—" A sharp knock interrupted her. Marcus stood in the doorway, his expression grim. "Sir, we have a situation." Marco was on his feet instantly, all business. "What kind of situation?" "Santoro's people just hit one of our distribution centers. 4 casualties, significant property damage. They left another message." Marcus's jaw tightened. "This one's not theatrical. It's a direct threat." "Show me." Marco turned back to Lena. "Stay here. Don't leave this room until I come back." Then he was gone. Marcus closing the door behind them, leaving Lena alone with her racing thoughts, and the ghost of his kiss still warm on her hand. She found the breakfast Elena had left, still warm, carefully chosen for someone in crisis. Lena ate mechanically, her mind churning through everything Marco had said and everything he hadn't. He was preparing to let her go, to cut her loose for her own safety. And some part of her understood the logic, even appreciated the sacrifice. But another part, the part that had spent 3 weeks missing him, The part that had slept peacefully with his hand in hers. The part that looked at him and saw not a monster but a man trying desperately to do the right thing. That part wanted to fight. The question was whether fighting would save them both or destroy everything. Elena appeared around noon with fresh clothes, casual but expensive, perfectly Lena's size. "Thought you might want something comfortable," she said, setting down bags from stores Lena recognized but could never afford. "Marco asked me to keep you company while he's dealing with business." "Is he okay?" Define okay. Elena settled into the armchair Marco had occupied earlier. "He's functional, focused, absolutely terrifying when he needs to be, but okay?" "No. He's torn apart trying to figure out how to protect you and solve this problem without starting a war that consumes half the city." Lena pulled on the soft cashmere sweater Elena had brought, grateful for something to do with her shaking hands. "This is all my fault. This is Santoro's fault. And Vincent's for being stupid enough to steal in the first place. And maybe a little bit Marco's for being so damn protective that it's obvious to everyone you matter." Elena's expression softened. "But it's not yours, Lena. You were just in the wrong place at the wrong time." Story of my life lately. Or maybe exactly the right place. Elena stood, moving to look out the windows at the gardens below. "I've known Marco since we were kids. Watched him grow up in this world. Watched him learn to be hard because soft got you killed. He's been alone for so long, keeping everyone at arm's length, that I'd almost forgotten he was capable of actually caring about someone. He cares about family, about you. That's different. That's obligation, blood, the connections you're born with. But you..." Elena turned back with a knowing smile. "You he chose. Against every instinct, every rule he's built for himself, he chose to protect you, to bring you into his home, to pace hallways worrying about your safety. That's not obligation, Lena. That's something else entirely. He's going to let me go. Of course he is, because he thinks that's what's best for you." Elena's smile turned sad. "But maybe you should tell him what you actually want before he makes that decision for you." Before Lena could respond, gunfire erupted somewhere in the distance, sharp cracks that made both women freeze. Elena moved instantly to the door, her casual demeanor vanishing into alert competence. "Stay here. Lock the door behind me. Don't open it for anyone except me or Marco." Then she was gone, leaving Lena alone with her pounding heart and the terrible certainty that the war Marco had predicted had just become reality. The next 3 hours were agony. Lena paced the room, jumped at every sound, tried calling Marco's phone only to get voicemail. Outside the windows, she could see guards moving with purposeful urgency, vehicles coming and going, the distant wail of sirens that suggested the violence had spread beyond Marco's property. When the door finally opened, Lena spun around expecting Marco. Instead, she found a man she didn't recognize, younger, harder, with cold eyes and a gun held loosely at his side. "Miss Vale, come with me." Every instinct screamed danger. "Where's Marco?" "Dealing with business. He sent me to move you somewhere safer." The man gestured with his gun. "We need to go now." Lena's mind raced. Marco had told her not to leave, had specifically said to wait for him. But this man wore the same kind of suit as Marco's other guards, spoke with the same professional tone, and the distant sounds of violence suggested the house might actually be under attack. "I'll wait for Marco." "There's no time." The man moved closer, and Lena saw something in his expression that made her blood run cold. "We're leaving. Now. You can walk or I can carry you, but either way, you're coming with me." Lena backed away, her hand finding her phone in her pocket. "I'm not going anywhere with you." The man lunged. Lena screamed and threw herself sideways, crashing into a side table hard enough to send a lamp shattering to the floor. She scrambled for the door, but the man was faster, catching her around the waist and hauling her backward. "Stop fighting. Santoro just wants to talk." The door exploded inward. Marco filled the doorway, his gun raised, his expression absolutely lethal. "Let her go." The man spun, using Lena as a shield, his own weapon pressing against her temple. "Back off, DeLuca. This doesn't have to get messy." You put a gun to her head. "It's already messy." Marco's voice was deadly calm, but his eyes blazed with fury Lena had never seen. Last chance. Release her and walk out of here breathing. Santoro wants her. He gets her. That's the deal. There is no deal. Marco took a step forward, and Lena felt the man's grip tighten painfully. And you just made the worst mistake of your extremely short career. Everything happened in a blur. The man's attention flickered to Marco's movement. Lena drove her elbow backward into his ribs with all her strength, using the self-defense moves she'd learned in college and prayed she'd never need. The man's grip loosened just enough. She dropped, making herself dead weight, and Marco fired. The sound was deafening in the enclosed space. The man collapsed, his gun clattering away. Lena scrambled backward on shaking hands until she hit the wall, her ears ringing, her body trembling violently. Then Marco was there, kneeling beside her, his hands framing her face. Are you hurt? Did he hurt you? I'm okay, Lena's voice broke. He said Santoro sent him. I know. Marco pulled her against his chest, one hand cradling the back of her head. He infiltrated my security team 3 months ago. We just figured it out. His arms tightened around her. If I'd been 10 seconds later. But you weren't. Lena clutched his shirt, grounding herself in his solid presence. You got here in time. Marcus appeared in the doorway with 3 other guards, taking in the scene with grim efficiency. Sir, we've secured the perimeter. 2 more of Santoro's plants identified and contained, but this was a coordinated assault. I know. Marco stood, pulling Lena up with him, keeping her tucked against his side. Get Dr. Ross up here to check her over, and tell David I want a full security sweep. Every person in this house verified against background checks within the hour. Already in progress, Marcus gestured to the body. What about this one? Send his head to Santoro with a message. Anyone who touches her dies. No exceptions. No negotiations. Marco's voice could have cut glass. And schedule a meeting. Tonight. Neutral ground. I'm ending this. After Marcus left with the body and Lena had been examined by a doctor who declared her physically unharmed if severely shaken, Marco led her to his private study and locked the door behind them. The room was beautiful, leather and dark wood and floor-to-ceiling bookshelves, but Lena barely noticed. You could have been killed, she said, her voice hollow. Coming after me like that? If he'd fired, he didn't. But he could have. You could have died saving me. Marco poured 2 drinks from a crystal decanter, pressing one into her hands. Drink. It'll help with the shock. Lena obeyed, the whiskey burning down her throat. This has to stop. I won't be the reason people die. You're not the reason. Santoro is. Marco drained his own glass in one swallow. He's been looking for an excuse to move against me for years. You just gave him one. If it hadn't been you, it would have been something else. But it is me. And it's destroying everything. Lena set down her glass with shaking hands. Maybe I should talk to him. Tell him I don't know anything, that I'm not a threat. Absolutely not. Marco's voice turned hard. You're not going anywhere near Santoro, ever. Then what? You wage war until one of you is dead, and how many others die in the crossfire? Lena stood, anger finally breaking through her fear. I won't let you destroy yourself protecting me, Marco. I won't be that person. You don't get a choice. Yes, I do. It's my life, my safety, my decision. Her voice broke. And I'm choosing to end this before anyone else gets hurt. Marco crossed the distance between them in 2 strides, gripping her shoulders. Listen to me very carefully. Santoro doesn't want to talk. He wants leverage. And if you walk into his hands voluntarily, I lose any ability to protect you. He'll use you to destroy me, then dispose of you because you're a witness he can't afford to leave alive. Is that what you want? No, I want this nightmare to end. I want to go back to normal. Lena's voice cracked completely. I want to stop being terrified that everyone I care about is going to die because of me. Something shifted in Marco's expression. Everyone you care about? The question hung between them, heavy with meaning. Lena closed her eyes, tears finally spilling over. You know what I mean. Say it anyway. Marco's hands gentled on her shoulders, his voice dropping. Say what you've been avoiding since you woke up in my guest room. Why? So you can tell me again that I need to walk away? That caring about you is dangerous? Lena opened her eyes, meeting his gaze directly. I already know that, Marco. I've known it since the moment you pulled me onto that dance floor, but knowing something is dangerous doesn't make you stop feeling it." Marco's thumb brushed away a tear from her cheek. "What do you feel, Lena?" "Terrified. Confused. Completely insane for trusting someone who kills people." She laughed, broken and bitter. "And something else I can't name, but feels like falling and flying at the same time. Something that makes me want to fight for you instead of running from you, even though running would be smarter." "That's not love, that's Stockholm Syndrome." "Don't," Lena pulled back sharply, "don't diminish what I feel by pathologizing it. Yes, you protected me when I was vulnerable. Yes, the situation forced proximity and dependence. But what I feel isn't about captivity or survival, it's about you. The man who sends breakfast and remembers how I take my coffee and looks at art with genuine appreciation. The man who keeps promises and values honesty and hates that this situation exists even though he didn't create it." Marco stared at her, something raw and uncertain crossing his features. "You barely know me. I know enough. I know you're capable of mercy when violence would be easier. I know you value loyalty and punish betrayal. I know you carry guilt for things that aren't your fault and responsibility for things that are." Lena stepped closer, her hand finding his chest, feeling his heartbeat racing beneath her palm. "I know that when you look at me, I feel seen. And when you touch me, I feel safe. And when you talk about letting me go, I feel like I'm losing something I didn't know I needed until it was already essential." "Lena," her name came out strangled. "I'm not asking you to love me back. I'm not even sure what I'm asking for. But I need you to stop deciding what's best for me and let me make my own choices." Her voice steadied, strengthened. "And I choose you, even knowing what you are, what you do, the danger it brings. I choose this. I choose us." Marco made a sound somewhere between a laugh and a groan, his forehead dropping to rest against hers. "You're going to get your heart broken. Or worse. Maybe. But that's my risk to take. I can't promise you safe. I can't promise you normal. I can barely promise you alive most days." His hands cupped her face, holding her like something precious and breakable. "But I can promise you honest and protected. And that I'll spend every day trying to be worthy of whatever insane trust you're placing in me." Lena smiled despite the tears still streaming down her face. "Is that your way of saying you choose me too? I chose you the moment I found you behind that shed and decided not to kill you." Marco's smile was crooked, vulnerable. "I've been lying to myself about it ever since. Telling myself it was strategy, protection, managing a problem. But the truth is, somewhere between that dance and tonight, you stopped being a complication and became everything." He kissed her then, finally, properly. Not for show or survival, but because they both needed it with desperate urgency. Lena melted into him, her hands fisting in his shirt, and let herself feel everything she'd been fighting for weeks. The kiss was gentle and fierce, tentative and certain, asking questions and answering them simultaneously. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Marco rested his forehead against hers. "I'm still going to that meeting with Santoro tonight, and I'm still going to end this threat permanently, but afterward," he paused. "Afterward, if you still want this, want us, we'll figure out what that looks like." "What if he kills you?" "He won't." "You can't know that." "I can, because I have something Santoro doesn't, a reason to survive that matters more than power or territory or pride." Marco kissed her forehead gently. "I have you to come back to. That changes everything." The meeting was set for midnight at a warehouse on neutral ground. Marco prepared with military precision, body armor under his suit, weapons checked and rechecked, strategy discussed with his most trusted people. Lena watched from the study, her stomach churning with fear she tried desperately to hide. "I want to come with you," she said as Marco checked his watch. "Absolutely not." "He wants me anyway." "Maybe if I'm there." "No." Marco crossed to her, gripping her shoulders. "You stay here with Elena and 12 armed guards who will shoot anyone who tries to take you. That's not negotiable." "What if something goes wrong?" "Then Elena has instructions to get you somewhere safe and keep you there until the situation resolves." His expression softened slightly. But nothing will go wrong, Lena. I promise. You can't promise that. Watch me. He kissed her hard and fast, then pulled back before she could deepen it. I'll be back in 3 hours. Wait up for me. Then he was gone, Marcus and 4 other guards flanking him, leaving Lena alone with Elena and her spiraling anxiety. He'll be fine, Elena said quietly, pouring them both wine. Marco survived worse than Santoro. Much worse. That doesn't make waiting easier. No, it never does. Elena handed her a glass. Welcome to loving someone in this world, Lena. The fear never goes away. You just learn to live with it. The hours crawled by. Lena tried to read, to watch television, to do anything that would quiet her racing mind. Elena stayed with her, patient and reassuring, sharing stories about Marco's childhood that made him seem more human and somehow more precious. At 1:15, Lena's phone rang. Marco's name flashed across the screen. Hello? Her voice shook. It's done. Marco sounded tired but alive, gloriously alive. Santoro won't be a problem anymore, neither will anyone who worked with him against us. Are you hurt? Scratched. Nothing serious. A pause. I'm coming home, Lena. Wait for me. He arrived 20 minutes later, Elena discreetly disappearing the moment he walked through the door. Lena took in his appearance, rumpled suit, a cut above his eyebrow, dried blood on his knuckles, and felt tears burning behind her eyes. You're bleeding. I've had worse. Marco caught her hands before she could reach for his face. It's over. Really over this time. Santoro's operation is dismantled. His network is scattered. Anyone who might have targeted you is either dead or running scared enough that they won't risk it. What did you do? What needed to be done? His expression was carefully neutral. Do you want details? Because I'll give them to you if you ask. I won't lie about what I am or what tonight required. Lena studied his face, seeing the exhaustion and the guilt and the grim satisfaction of a job completed. She could ask, could demand to know exactly what violence had secured her safety, but some instinct told her she didn't need those details, didn't want them haunting her dreams alongside everything else. I trust you did what was necessary to protect us. She squeezed his hands. That's enough. Relief flooded his expression. Thank you. Don't thank me, just... Her voice broke. Just promise you'll stay. That we get to figure out what comes next together. Marco pulled her into his arms, holding her tight enough to hurt. I promise. No more letting you go. No more deciding what's best for you without asking. We're in this together now, whatever it looks like. They stood like that for a long time, holding each other in the quiet house, both afraid to let go and test whether the nightmare had truly ended. Finally, Marco pulled back enough to look at her face. I need to tell you something about my business, my plans. He guided her to the couch, keeping her hand in his. I've been planning to transition for years, moving operations legitimate, reducing the violence, building legal enterprises. Tonight accelerated that timeline. Because of me? Because of us. Because I want a future that doesn't end in blood or prison or worse. His thumb traced circles on her palm. It'll take time. Years, probably, and there will still be danger, still be complications. But I'm done with this life, Lena. I'm done with wars and territory and all the things that almost got you killed. You don't have to change your entire life for me. I'm not. I'm changing it for me. You just gave me a reason to finally do what I've been too afraid to start. Marco raised her hand to his lips. Help me. Be part of building something new, something better. Lena felt something settle in her chest. Not quite peace, but acceptance, understanding, the acknowledgement that love didn't require perfection, just honesty and effort and the willingness to choose each other despite the complications. Okay, she whispered. We'll build it together. 6 months later, Lena stood in the east gallery of Marco's home, watching afternoon light play across the Rothstein triptych she'd helped install a lifetime ago. The house felt like home now, her clothes in the closet, her books on the shelves, her art supplies scattered across the studio Marco had built for her. The transition hadn't been smooth. There had been difficult conversations with Claire and Sarah about her relationship with someone they recognized from news reports and whispered warnings. There had been adjustments to living with guards and security protocols, and the reality that Marco's past didn't vanish just because they wanted it to. But there had also been laughter and quiet mornings and the slow building of something genuine. Marco kept his promise about going legitimate, divesting from criminal enterprises and investing in real estate, technology, charitable foundations. The violence faded, replaced by strategy meetings and legal consultations and the careful work of transformation. Lena returned to the gallery part-time, using her expertise to help Marco build a legitimate art collection while staying connected to the work she loved. She'd made peace with the duality, gallery assistant by day, partner to a reforming crime boss by night, and found unexpected freedom in no longer pretending her life was simple. Still admiring Rothstein? Marco appeared behind her, his arms sliding around her waist, his chin settling on her shoulder. Still thinking about that first day you came to the gallery, how terrified I was. Lena leaned back against him. How much has changed since then? Everything has changed, and nothing that matters. Marco turned her to face him, his expression soft with affection that still made her heart race. I love you, you know. I don't say it enough, but I do. I know. Lena smiled, reaching up to touch his face. I love you too. Even though you're infuriating and overprotective and you still make decisions without consulting me sometimes. I'm working on that. I know you are. She kissed him gently. That's why I stay. Marco pulled a small box from his pocket and Lena's breath caught. This isn't a proposal. Not yet. But I wanted you to have it. He opened the box to reveal a delicate ring, sapphire and diamond, beautiful without being ostentatious. A promise that I'm choosing you every day, that we're building something real, that whatever comes next, we face it together. Lena's eyes filled with tears as Marco slipped the ring onto her finger. Fit perfectly, of course it did, because he'd been paying attention just like he always did. Yes, she whispered. Yes to the promise? Or yes to the question I haven't asked yet? Both. Lena laughed through her tears. Yes to all of it, to promises and questions and whatever insane future we're building. Yes to you, Marco De Luca, with full knowledge of who you are and what that means. Marco kissed her then, deep and sure, and full of all the things they'd survived to reach this moment. When they finally broke apart, both smiling, he rested his forehead against hers. Thank you for being brave enough to stay, he said quietly. For seeing past the monster to the man underneath, for choosing love over safety. Thank you for being worth it. Lena held up her hand, watching light catch on the sapphire, and for proving that love doesn't need to be safe to be real. It just needs to be chosen. They stood together in the gallery, surrounded by art and afternoon light, two people who'd found each other in the worst possible circumstances and built something beautiful anyway. Outside, the world continued its complicated dance of danger and possibility. But inside Marco's home, their home now, Lena finally understood what she'd been searching for without knowing it. Not safety, not simplicity, not the absence of fear, but the courage to choose love anyway, to trust in transformation, and to believe that even the darkest beginnings could lead to light if you were willing to walk through the fire together. Marco had been right that night in the garden, though neither of them knew it then. The kiss that broke the line had changed everything. Not because it marked her as his to his enemies, but because it marked the beginning of something neither of them could have predicted or prevented. A love that survived the fire. A partnership built on truth. A future crafted from the ashes of violence into something genuine and lasting. And as the sun set beyond the windows, painting the sky in shades of crimson and gold, Lena Vale looked at the man beside her and knew with absolute certainty that she'd made the right choice. Not the safe choice, not the easy choice, not the choice anyone would have recommended, but hers. Completely and utterly hers. And that made all the difference.